ahead.
Good morning. Okay, let us begin with the metta meditation. May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings have happy minds. Whatever living beings there may be, without exception, weak or strong, long, large, medium, short, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, living near or far, born or coming to birth, may all beings have happy minds. Let no one deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere. Neither from anger nor ill will should anyone wish harm to another. As a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child, even so towards all living beings, one should cultivate a boundless heart. One should cultivate for all the world a heart of boundless loving friendliness, above, below, and all around, unobstructed, without hate or resentment, whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down, or whenever awake. One should develop this mindfulness. This is called divinely dwelling here, not falling into erroneous views, but virtuous and endowed with vision, removing desires for sensual pleasures. One comes never again to birth in the womb. With this metta thought, let us begin our mindfulness practice. Metta also can be used as a mindfulness practice, but let us continue our way of doing it. We pay total mindful attention to our breath. I said mindful is attention with Yoniso Manasikara. Yoniso Manasikara means seeing from the root of defilements arising and taking care of them then and there using our Sangra Padhana effort, right effort. First is to restrain our senses. Second is to overcome unwholesome states. Third, to develop arouse wholesome state. Fourth, to maintain and sustain wholesome state. This whole thing is called Yoniso Manasikara. When we pay attention to the breath with this background, we notice the breath touching our nostrils and expanding our lower abdomen and chest area. As we breathe out, we notice contraction of lower abdomen, chest area, and breath leaving our nostrils. These functions, these activities go on and on all the time, whether we are aware of them or not. Here in difference in our practice is that we become aware of these occurrences, these activities. Being aware of these activities, pay attention to the breath. And then you can notice the breath is rising and falling. Along with that feeling arises that also rises and falls. We perceive the breath and the feeling that also rises and falls. We pay intentional attention that also rises and falls. We are conscious all the time of all these. This consciousness also rises and falls. So none of them stays the same. They always change all the time. And when we notice this, mind does not try to hold on to anything because nothing can be hold on to because they are so quickly changing, arising and passing away, subject to impermanence. And then we don't try to hold on to anything, will subside. Then the body relaxes, the breath relaxes, mind relaxes. In the relaxed state of mind, rigidity, uptightness, resentment, anger, which fades away, giving room to metta feeling. With this feeling we practice, then we notice our practice pervades all living beings, and then restlessness and worry fades away, compassion arises, and this gives rise to energy, further energy, and this energy overcomes our sleepiness and drowsiness. Seeing all this happening one after the other, we begin to see the truth of Dhamma, inevitable truth, always happening naturally. Then confidence in the Dhamma, confidence in the Buddha, confidence in the Sangha arises, and then all doubt fades away because we see the truth, our own personal experience, and that gives us joy that increases to leading up to happiness. Happiness makes the body and mind calm, relaxed, tranquil. That leads to concentration. When we gain concentration, true mindful concentration, we don't become like a vegetable or inanimate object, but fully aware, insightful to see the subtlest changes taking place in us. They all rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall. When it rises, always we find something new, and then instantly it fades away. That's the nature of impermanence. Impermanence is not something exists, but it comes to existence with the rising of something, and with the passing away of something. That is where we see real impermanence. Impermanence is not settle some existing things. Everything is arising and impermanence. Everything is passing away impermanence. Everything sustained in the present moment impermanent. When we see this, we gain deeper insight, wisdom to understand non-self, that there is no any permanent self lodged somewhere in this mentality and materiality, together with consciousness. All we experience is a state of flux. Even us, so-called us, are no longer there. This practice. So let us continue with this background. and see how true what I said so far is. Dukkha patta cha niddukkha, bhaya patta cha nibbhaya, soka patta cha nissoka, hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. So too may all beings be. With this very altruistic metta thought, let us try to understand the answers to these questions that Brian asked me.
Okay, Bante, first question. Is there a difference in the karmic effect between the following two persons? Person number one who is well versed in the Buddha's teaching and the law of karma, but due to his defilement committed unwholesome action. Person number two, one who is totally ignorant of the Buddha's teaching and the law of karma, committed the same unwholesome action as the above person.
Uh, I think the first ones, if the first one who knows Dhamma, who knows Karma, if he does something unethical, immoral, uh, killing, stealing, and so on, uh, then the other person who does not know anything of Dhamma or Karma commits the same thing. The first one's is more responsible. He commits more. Although the karmas are the same, but the first one is his commitment is more serious than the second one, because the first one, knowing, seeing, understanding all this, he commit these karmas. uh, there is no any excuse for that person. If you go to uh, criminal court in any country, uh, first one will have suppose first one kill someone with knowing, understanding the repercussions of the killing. He will be the verdict will be passed against him as a capital punishment. And the other one, not knowing anything, he committed something, and there is a little excuse for him for not knowing the karma and its result. He has a little excuse, so the punishment will be little lenient to him. Say, having said that, I must give a practical example. Suppose there is a hot pan, very, very hot. One who knows that it is very hot and still he thinks it doesn't matter. I must put my hand on it. He gets burned. And the other one also put his hand without knowing it at all. Put the hand on this hot pan. He gets his hand gets burnt. Now, as far as burning is concerned, both of them have the same burning. But the first one uh, cannot have an excuse for putting his hand to to prevent from burning. He certainly get burned. In the karmic situation, when the first one does something knowingly, willingly, he is very rigid, uptight, doesn't care, and he will have more serious repercussion. But the other one, he simply does not know, and therefore there's a little leniency towards him even in law of karma. But both of them have committed it with intention. Of course, uh, some people say, since you mentioned the word karma, uh, what is karma? People say it is the law of action and reaction. That is not the definition of karma. Law of action and reaction is a law of physics. But the karma is not just just like that. Karma is something that is committed with intention. So the Buddha said intention is the karma. So it is much more profound. The Buddhist karma definition is more profound, more complete than physical law of karma. Physical law of karma happens automatically. For every action, there is a reaction. But in the law of karma, in the Buddhist definition, is that it is not, on the one hand, it is really the law of what you call action and reaction, but in addition to that, there is something very specific thing, that is the intention. If we commit something intentionally, then that becomes karma according to Buddha's teaching. So these two people, the first one and the second, both must have an intention to commit something. The first one is knowing, understanding, and all these things. He does it with stubbornness and disregarding, disrespectful of the truth, and therefore he is he will have graver, more serious results.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah.
Dear Bhante, I have been reading your book Beyond Mindfulness in Plain English alongside my notes from your talks, trying hard to understand the profound Dhamma that you share with us. You mention, quote, noticing changes without greed, hatred, and delusion is the essence of your mindful practice. My question is, how does one let go of an unwholesome thought of greed, hatred, and delusion when it arises during meditation?
I think that's a good question. I hinted the answer at the beginning of this morning instructions. When we practice meditation or anything, we always must keep two things in mind. Two things first. First is yoniso manasikara, and the other is sammapadhana, right effort. Let me explain how these two work together in any action. Yoniso manasikara means seeing something happening from its root, from the beginning. Yoni means begin. Manasikara means bringing to our consciousness, awareness. So we become aware of the root of certain mental state arising. For instance, when certain mental state arises from greed, we know greed is the root. When certain mental state arises from hatred or anger is a root. When certain mental state arises with confusion is the root coming from ignorance. On the other hand, if something arises without greed, that non-greed is the root. Again, non-hatred is a root, and non-delusion is, that is vidya, root. So, when something arises with greed, we immediately, of course, we start our practice with the intention of not having any unwholesome mental state arising. Unwholesome mental state specifically are mental state charged with greed, hatred, and delusion. All other mental states are rooted in these three basic roots. They stem from them. We don't want them to happen. So, with this intention, with this awareness, we practice, and this is what is called Sangvara Padhana. Sangvara means restraining our senses, because unwholesome can state arise through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind from six senses. Now, or some the experiences we had in the past, we have spoken, we have done something, we have thought certain things, whether in the past or present or we don't know in future, but at least the past and now, certain mental states can arise from either one of these three roots. And therefore, from the very beginning, we keep our awareness to prevent them from happening. Prevent them from happening. From our previous experience, we know certain mental state were arisen, and we don't want that to happen again. That caution is called prevention. Prevention, we want to take caution, what you call precaution to prevent. Taking precaution to prevent is called Sangvara Padhana. Sangvara Padhana. Restraining our senses. These two factors we must keep in mind. One is Yonso Manasikara, to see the root of defilements arising, and the other is to restrain them from arising. Then, in spite of our very sincere wish and effort, because of our samsaric habit that we have built up in this very life from our childhood up to this moment, habitually we got angry, we were greedy, we were confused, and so forth. This can happen habitually. In spite of our very earnest wish that they do not arise in our mind, because of this habit, they can prop up in our mind. At that moment, we apply the second effort. First, we see Yoniso Manasikar, mindful reflection. We use the word mindful reflection loosely, but it is much deeper than that. So, when it arose, then immediately we pull our resource of right effort, second right effort, to overcome. That's called Pahana Padhana, overcoming that particular mental state. How can we, what us the thought of overcoming that is see the danger of this. We see the danger of this very particular unwholesome mental state. What is the danger of, say, for instance, greed is arisen? What is the danger in greed? It is very painful, it is very obsessive, and we become very restless, and it final analysis, it causes suffering. It never is going to make us peaceful. We have seen it from our personal experience in our life in the past, in our memory, all, all is locked in our memory, and we can see how much suffering we had in the past when we were greedy. So bring all this previous experience, knowledge, understanding to see the danger of greed, and then pull resource of effort to overcome this. You tell yourself, talk to yourself, just like the Buddha mentioned in Dveda Vitakka Sutta, when he put all his into two categories, wholesome category and unwholesome category. When unwholesome state arises from the unwholesome category means that a lot of things are there in the one bundle. When one of them arises, he immediately brings his mindfulness, and then he knows the danger of this unwholesome state and bring his right effort of overcoming and use it and work very hard. And that is why he said he used what you call four factor effort. Let my body will wither, my blood will dry up, my flesh will reduce, and may I reduce to skeleton and so forth. Is called Chaturanga Samannagata Virya, four types of virya effort. He applied this, and using all his might, uh, according to Vitakka Santana Sutta, he finally grind his teeth and use all human effort. It's called Purusha Viryena, Purusha Pathamena, and so forth. Human effort, human endeavor, human dignity, using all these resources to overcome this particular unknown state. And that is what we have to do. At least, although we may not be able to do as much effort as the Bodhisattva did, at least we can get inspiration from what he did, because we are following his following his path. We are his students, this learning, and therefore we get inspiration from the Buddha's own effort to overcome this particular mental state. That is called Pahana Padhana. And then we see peace, we see some tranquility, we see some calmness in mind. Then we want, that is what we want to use. Again and again and again, that is called Bhavana Padhana. Bhavana Padhana. And then, once it is present in our mind, should not let go of it. We should not let go of it. Don't cling to that. That's it. Jitanjarake anivesanosia. Yodhetamaram panyayudhena. Jitanjarake anivesanosia. Using the wisdom weapon defeat the Mara. All these defilements are Maras. Jitanjarake. Fight these enemies with wisdom weapon, but don't dwell upon them, don't cling to them, don't cling, and just let that happen and simply be aware, mindful of that particular state. It's called Anurag Padhan. Anurag, you have to have very strong skill, strong power, Viriya Indriya, Viriya Bala, that moment to maintain this very important mental state without clinging to it. That is the secret. Many times you know when you when countries wage wars against their enemies, they acquire certain piece of land, then they establish a garrison there to protect that. And Buddha said, you fight the Mara with wisdom weapon, but don't hang on that. Don't keep hanging on to it. Don't try to cling to it. If you try to cling to it, you have not defeated the Mara. You are still is subject to be vanquished. And therefore, this is what we have to do. Uh, so, what is the next question?
The next question. Bhante, can consciousness also be interpreted as awareness?
Yeah, consciousness, difficult to translate, but yeah, perhaps in English we can also say awareness. Consciousness has the connotation of uh, being conscious. That, of course, arises and passes away because consciousness also is not something locked and staying there permanently. For instance, when eye, visual objects come together, consciousness arises, and next, split second, it can pass away. It cannot stay. So this keep repeating million times, every fraction of a second, very quickly, and and during that time, the mind becomes aware of what is happening. So awareness, consciousness seems to be synonymous in our experience. Yes.
Thank you, Bhante.
Mm-hmm. Next question.
Most akusala is due to thoughts innately. If we stop as soon as a bad thought arises in mind, can we shorten this samsara?
Yes, the akusala certainly is a very unskillful state. Kusala is a skillful state. These two words are very important. Akusala is the one that anchors us to samsara. We are anchored, we are stuck and tied to samsara because of akusala. Kusala is a very important Pali word. Kusala is the one very powerful force that open our wisdom eye to liberate ourselves from repetition of birth and death, liberate ourselves from suffering. And therefore, your question is akusala is due to thoughts.
Yeah, initially.
Initially, yeah. Akusala is certainly is unwholesome thought, akusala, or unskillful thought against kusala thought. That is why we have to have samma sankappa. Samma sankappa means skillful thought against miccha sankappa, unskillful thought. Right thought is samma sankappa is translated into English as right thought. I think skillful thought is even better because definitely skillful, unskillful are thoughts arising from thought, and therefore they make the whole polar difference. One is tying us down to samsara, other is liberating us from samsara. We have to have a great skill to liberate ourselves from samsara because there are always red herrings. You know, red herrings, traps here and there, various traps to trap us, and Mara, they call sometimes Mara. Mara is always waiting to find tiny little loopholes in our life to grab us. And Buddha said, Imang samudang sagahang saraksasang sa uming bayang duttarang achatari. That means this samsaric ocean has sharks, whales, and various snakes, and various kind of dangerous, poisonous, what do you call fish, like eels, who have electrical power, they have electricity, and so forth. And then umi, big currents, waves, and so many waves, in addition to many other things in this samsaric ocean. So one who swims across this ocean has to be extremely skillful to avoid all these big waves like tsunami, big fish, mammal like whale, big fish like shark, eel, what do you call octopus, and so forth. So many dangerous traps, maras are waiting to grab us. So we have to have a great skill to maneuver ourselves to avoid all these things, to swim safe to the other shore. And therefore, skill is a wonderful part, what you call kusala. Kusala is one that cuts through all these obstacles and liberate us from samsara. And therefore, this word is very important to remember. And then another question.
Bhante, in terms of faith, what is the difference between sadha and aveccha pasada?
Yes, very good question. Aveccha pasada means faith endowed with knowledge. Faith endowed with knowledge. Aveccha pasada. That means your faith is based on knowing the truth. Knowing that, suppose we have that in the Buddha. We have the faith in the Buddha, not just blind faith, because it's appearance and so forth, but knowing, understanding the supreme state of enlightenment of the Buddha, we can have faith. Another is understanding the Dhamma. We may not understand the entire Dhamma, but we understand the basic principle of Dhamma of dependent origination. And nobody, nowhere, on anywhere in the whole universe, I say definitely there is no one. I have studied religions as my degrees, and I have never come across any religion that teaches dependent origination. The law of existence. When this is, we mentioned this many times. I don't mind repeating it, for it is wonderful thing that we remember. So Uh, I don't want to go overboard, but I want to finish this. The thought that came to my mind. That is, this being, this is. This not being, this is not. This arising, this arises. This not arising, this does not arise. This passes away, this passes away. This formula you can apply to anything in the universe. Anything. If you know science, I don't know very much about science, but I can see the science in this teaching. That is, no scientist can come up with anything that exists by itself. It has a cause, and then that cause has a result. When the cause, when in this formula, when something arises, almost simultaneously other arises. When something passes away, almost simultaneously other thing also passes away. And therefore, when we have faith in the Buddha and Dhamma and Sangha with this kind of understanding, that is called, of course, this is not enough, but this is at least an example. That's called avecca prasada. Avecca means knowing, having known, understood. It comes from the root with, to know. Avecca. Avecca prasada means pleasantness, clarity, or faith endowed with understanding. Okay, so Saddha is just, we have to assume whenever we talk about Saddha, that Saddha is not the blind Saddha. That Saddha is a very clear trust in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. With this, each of them is a subject by itself, but in a short period we have no time to explain all this in detail. Now we started with metta. Let us conclude this session with metta and wish all those who are in pain and suffering be relieved from the suffering and return to normal life, live long in good health. There are people, including some of our friends, whose dear ones have passed away and they are still grieving, and may they be free from that grief through the understanding of Dhamma and come to their very normal health and continue the practice of Dhamma and attain liberation from Sankara. Then there will no longer be more grief. And there are hospital patients taken care of by the doctors, nurses, and so on. And may these wonderful people, very generous, marvelous ideas, they have very compassionate heart to take care of the patients, and they dedicate life, even risking their own health. They do this service. May they continue their wonderful service. There are many people who are financially supporting to help them, and may they continue their very wonderful, noble, selfless service. And there are many leaders who have done wonderful in some countries, and may they continue their job very successfully. Other leaders are not, have done not very much. So let them have wisdom, understanding, determination, and compassion to make right decisions for the benefit of all living beings. With this benediction of with metta, let us conclude this small section. Thank you once again for joining us encouraging us to continue this service for everyone.